"Don't touch her." The words weren't loud. They weren't shouted across the room. They were calm, steady as a heartbeat before a storm. But the entire café went silent the moment he said them. The kind of silence that makes people look up from their coffee cups and suddenly remember how fragile dignity can be. Before we go any further, if you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in standing up for someone who can't stand up for themselves, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs a reminder that good people still exist, and subscribe to the channel for more stories that restore your faith in humanity. It was late afternoon when Daniel Mercer stepped into the small brick-walled café on the corner of 5th and Alder. The place smelled of roasted coffee beans and fresh bread, but he barely noticed. His mind was still somewhere else, somewhere dusty, loud, and far away. Even after 3 years back home, the war hadn't quite left him. It lingered in the way he scanned rooms, in the way his shoulders stayed tight, and in the way he always chose the seat facing the door. Daniel was a single father. His wife had passed away from a sudden illness while he was still deployed overseas. By the time he returned, he wasn't just grieving, he was raising an 8-year-old daughter named Lily who had grown quieter than a child should ever be. He had promised himself 2 things: he would never let his daughter feel unprotected again, and he would never ignore injustice when he saw it. That afternoon, he had come to the café straight from a job interview. Civilian life had not been kind to him. Employers saw the decorated veteran on paper but hesitated at the haunted eyes and long employment gap. Bills stacked on his kitchen counter. Lily's school shoes had holes in them. And yet, Daniel carried himself with quiet dignity, refusing to let hardship make him bitter. The café was busy. College students laughed in the corner. A young couple argued softly over their phones. And moving swiftly between tables was a waitress who couldn't have been more than 25. Her name tag read Emily. She wore a simple black apron over a white blouse, her brown hair tied back neatly, her expression polite but distant, as if she had mastered the art of smiling without revealing anything real. Daniel noticed the way one table of men watched her. 4 of them. Loud. Confident in the careless way of men who had never been told no. When Emily brought their drinks, one of them grabbed her wrist. Not violently, but firmly enough to make the gesture unmistakable. That was when Daniel stood up. "Don't touch her," he said calmly. There was something in his tone that carried weight. Not aggression. Not threat. Just certainty. The kind forged in places where hesitation could cost lives. The man holding Emily's wrist scoffed at first. He looked Daniel up and down, perhaps measuring him. Daniel wasn't in uniform anymore. He wore a faded green jacket and jeans. But the discipline in his posture gave him away. The steadiness in his eyes told a story of someone who had seen chaos and refused to let it win. Emily gently pulled her hand free. Her cheeks were flushed, not just from embarrassment but from something deeper, shame, perhaps, that she needed help at all. The men muttered, but they let it go. Something in Daniel's stillness unsettled them. They paid and left, throwing annoyed glances behind them. The café slowly exhaled. Conversations resumed. Cups clinked again. Emily approached Daniel's table a few minutes later, her hands trembling slightly as she set down his coffee. She didn't say much, but her eyes did. Gratitude. Surprise. And something like curiosity. Over the next few weeks, Daniel returned to that café more often. Not intentionally at first. It was simply affordable, and Lily liked the muffins Emily sometimes wrapped up for her on the house. But gradually, something shifted. Emily began sitting for a minute during her breaks. Daniel spoke about Lily. About bedtime stories and missing homework folders. About how hard it was to be both father and mother. Emily listened quietly, asking thoughtful questions. She shared little about herself. She said she was just trying to get by, saving up for something important. Her clothes were modest, her car an old sedan that coughed every time it started. She worked double shifts without complaint. One evening, Daniel arrived to find the café closed unexpectedly. A printed notice on the door read, "Closed for private event." Through the window, he saw black cars lined up outside. Men in suits. Women in elegant dresses. The café, usually humble and warm, had transformed into something almost regal. Confused, Daniel turned to leave when a familiar voice called his name. Emily stood behind him, but she didn't look like the waitress he knew. Her hair was down in soft waves. She wore a deep blue dress that shimmered under the streetlights. Beside her stood an older gentleman in a tailored suit, his expression proud and watchful. Daniel stared, unsure whether he had stepped into someone else's story. Emily took a slow breath and explained. Her full name was Emily Whitmore. Her father owned Whitmore Hospitality Group, the company that owned not only this café but dozens of hotels and restaurants across the state. She wasn't just a waitress. She was the heiress. She had chosen to work anonymously in one of their smallest cafés to understand the business from the ground up. To see how employees were treated. To see how customers behaved when they thought no one important was watching. And that day, she told him softly, when you stood up for me, you didn't know who I was. You just saw someone who needed help. Daniel felt heat rise to his face. He hadn't done it for recognition. He hadn't even thought about it. It had simply been instinct. Emily's father stepped forward then, extending his hand. He had reviewed security footage after the incident. He had seen the calm in Daniel's stance, the way he de-escalated without violence. He had also seen Daniel's frequent visits, the way he treated staff with respect, the way his daughter's laughter filled the cafe on Saturday mornings. We could use someone like you, the older man said. Security director for our entire hospitality group. Full benefits. Flexible hours. Daniel's world shifted in that moment. Not because of the job. Not because of the salary that would erase the mountain of bills. But because someone had seen him, not as a broken veteran, not as a liability, but as a man of integrity. In the months that followed, Daniel rebuilt more than just his finances. Lily's shoes were replaced. Her laughter returned. The weight on Daniel's shoulders eased, little by little. Emily continued to work in the cafes occasionally, still learning, still grounded. And whenever someone crossed a line, they were handled swiftly, not with anger, but with firm boundaries. Because sometimes, all it takes to change a life is a calm voice in a quiet room saying, "Don't touch her." Before we end, if this story touched your heart even a little, please like, share, and comment below. Your engagement helps these stories reach people who need hope. And I have a special request, comment the word respect if you believe every woman deserves to feel safe wherever she works. Daniel never sought recognition. He never imagined that one simple act of decency would alter the course of his life. But kindness has a way of circling back. Courage, when practiced quietly, echoes loudly. And somewhere in that small brick cafe, beneath soft lights and the scent of coffee, a veteran found not just a job, but a reminder that honor doesn't end on the battlefield. Sometimes, it begins in the smallest moments, when no one expects it, and someone chooses to stand up anyway.